यः वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति। We are starting a new chapter, chapter 20, the Supreme Reality. Now, till now, we have seen the theory of, from the law of karma, we moved on to the theory of perception. From theory of perception, we moved on to the illusions, Maya, and that which is beyond the illusions, that upon which the illusion happens is that supreme reality. And what is that supreme reality is what we are going to study in this chapter. So, first we will talk about the supreme God, Brahman, with its various attributes. And then we will talk about the manifestations of Brahman. And then what you have to assert and what you have to negate in the manifestations. So there is the manifestation. First we talk about the supreme God. And then we talk about the manifestations of Brahman. And then in that manifestation, something you assert and something you negate. Followed by the Trinity, the idea of the Trinity. And then we'll conclude with the three schools of thought, the Dvaita, the Advaita, and the Visishta Advaita. We conclude with the three finally. So, now we start with the Supreme God. In this topic here, in this topic, the Supreme Reality, the Supreme God, how everything, the seen, the unseen, everything is Brahman. That is the theme here. How the seen, the unseen, everything is the Brahman, the reality. It could have been just the reality. The supreme is, the word supreme gives about the highest nature of it. It is real, that's all. Reality is reality. There is no higher reality or lower form of reality. And then here it is called as the supreme reality. What is meant by supreme here? That which is meant by supreme here is this. There can never be anything above this at any point of time. In that sense, it is supreme. Again, I repeat, supreme means there, there cannot be anything above this at any point of time. This is the supreme reality. That supreme reality manifests as Brahman. The supreme reality, to indicate that supreme reality, the word given, the name given to that supreme reality is Brahman. What is that Brahman? The supreme God. That is the first. That is the first topic. The supreme God. The supreme God the text. The perceiver and the perceived, the individual and the world, the experiencer and the experienced, everything, every being, everywhere is the ultimate reality, the Supreme God known as Brahman. There exists nothing other than Brahman. The entire phenomena of the play of plurality, of things and beings, of names and forms, is a mere superimposition upon the one reality, an illusory projection upon Brahman. But the superimposition does not make Brahman any less or more. It remains the same, immaculate, infinite. An invocation in the ancient text of the Upanishad pronounces this truth. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadhaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Translation. Om. That is infinite. This is infinite. Infinite has come out of infinite. Take away infinite from infinite, what remains is infinite. Adaha means that. That refers to the supreme reality, Brahman. Idam is this. This refers to the world, the pluralistic phenomenon projected upon Brahman. Brahman is supreme, infinite, inconceivable by the intellect. The world also appears infinite in nature. The world has emerged from Brahman, but Brahman is not any less. It remains the same, unaffected, unchanged. This truth is akin to lighting many candles from a single flame. Numerous flames arise from that one flame. Yet the original flame is not any less. It remains the same, unchanged. So it is with Brahman. The universe has emerged from Brahman, yet it remains ever the same. The infinite cosmos is drawn out of infinite Brahman. What remains is infinite Brahman. As in mathematics, infinite minus infinite is infinite. Another example is that of numerous garments made of cotton. Cotton is spun into yarn, yarn woven into cloth, and cloth made into garments. All these have come out of cotton. Nevertheless, cotton is not any less. Cotton remains as cotton, be it in its original state or in the variety of garments produced. These examples serve as useful pointers to conceive Brahman, though it is indefinable, inconceivable. They go a long way to explain the inexplicable, so that the human intellect can formulate some idea of its magnitude and magnificence. The most direct and practical example is the experience of the dream. The phenomenon of the dream proceeds from the mind. The dream consists of the dreamer and the dream world. The dream world also comprises infinite pairs of opposites, things and beings, names and forms. The creation of the dream world does not render the mind any less. The mind remains just the same, unaffected, unsullied by the projection of the dream. In fact, all aspects of the dream are mere thoughts of the mind. The variety of thoughts have assumed these forms. As long as the dream lasts, the dreamer will not realize the insubstantial nature of the dream world. The dreamer experiences the solidarity, the reality of the dream world, just as the waker experiences that of the waking world. Only when the dreamer crosses the dream world, wakes up into the waking world, the waker realizes the entire dream world to be a figment of his mind. Similarly, The waking world and its infinite phenomena are nothing but different aspects of Brahman. The waker does not recognize this truth as long as he is in the waking state, just as the dreamer does not realize the nature of the dream world while he is in the dream. But the moment waker recognizes the self Atman, Brahman, rises from the waking state to self-realization. He apprehends the whole truth, that the waking world is yet another illusory projection, that Brahman alone is the reality. Reality is that which persists, which exists in all periods of time, remains the same in the past, present, and future. Reality exists both as manifest and unmanifest, as structure and substratum. The world arises out of reality, exists in reality, merges ultimately into reality. As waves arise, exist, and merge into the ocean. The waves are nothing but water. So is the world nothing but the reality, Brahman. Up to this point, there is a thought flow. From the next paragraph, there is the another thought flow where we will be discussing the lot of attributes of Brahman. Ekam, Advayam, Nirakaram, Sarvagatam, Nirgunam, Aksharam, all that will be, there are about a few indicative pointers to Brahman that is given, we will discuss that. Before we go into the indicative definitions of Brahman, the first thing, what is this world? We have seen that already. What is this world? This world is a illusory projection on Brahman. We have seen that already. What is this world? It is an illusory projection. It's called Maya. It is. The superimposition doesn't affect the reality in any way. That's where we start. Previous lesson confirmed that it is a superimposition. That superimposition doesn't affect the reality in any way is the supreme reality. How do you understand that the superimposition doesn't affect the reality in any way? The snake doesn't affect the rope in any way. The snake cannot affect the rope in any way. In that sense, though there is a superimposition, nothing happens to the reality. The reality remains as it is at all periods of time. How to understand that? How do we understand that? That is what the Upanishad has taught us. That is what the Upanishad has taught us. Since that is what the Upanishad has taught us, that is the right knowledge. What is that right knowledge? The invocation in the ancient text of the Upanishad. Purnamada, Purnamidam, Purnat, Purnamudachyate, Purnasya, Purnamadhaya, Purnameva Vasishyate. It is Purnam means whole, complete, infinite. Again, I repeat, the Sanskrit word Purnam means it is whole, not H-O-L-E, W-H-O-L-E. Yeah. But both has to be pronounced in the same way, no? I don't know. Yeah. Purnam means whole, W-H-O-L-E. Purnam means it's complete. Purnam means it is infinite. In this invocatory prayer to the Upanishad, we understand the vision of Vedanta, the emphasis on Vedanta. What is the emphasis of the Upanishads? What is the emphasis of Vedanta? Nobody can say anything higher than this invocatory prayer. Or whatever is said later is only a reiteration of this mantra. Volumes and volumes of literature we have. Books and books and books are written on this Vedantic knowledge. And this entire Vedantic knowledge is a simple reiteration of this one mantra. What is that one mantra? That is Purnam, this is Purnam. Take away Purnam from Purnam, what remains is Purnam. It means what? It is always Purnam. That's what it means. And how do you translate Purnam? Purnam means wholeness, fullness, completeness. A wholeness, a fullness, a completeness which is ever present. It is not the wholeness is achieved wholeness. It is not the fullness that is achieved. It is full. It is whole always. It is full always. It is infinite always. That's where we don't, in Vedanta, we don't talk about a perfect being. We talk about a whole being. There is a lot of difference between wholeness and perfection. And you got to know this difference. From unfulfillment to fulfillment, from incomplete to complete, from imperfect to perfect is not Vedanta. Again, I repeat. From imperfect to perfect, from incompleteness to completeness is not Vedanta. From imperfection, we like to become perfect. From incomplete, we like to become complete. From unfulfilled, we like to become fulfilled. Vedanta comes and says, all this doesn't exist. So, what is the fundamental difference? What is the fundamental idea of Vedanta? Fullness, wholeness, infinite. It is very appealing to the ego to talk from imperfection to perfection. Again, I repeat, it is very appealing to the ego to say that you are imperfect now, do A, B, C, D things, you can become perfect. It appeals to the ego a lot. Why? Because why it appeals to the ego a lot? It appeals to the ego a lot because it can do something to get it. It can do something to get there. From incompleteness to completeness, from imperfection to perfection is not the vision of Vedanta. That is why this invocatory mantra is the knowledge which is said, and again and again and again, enlightened masters go on reiterating it. They don't say anything new. But what will appeal the ego? What will be appealing to the ego? That which will be appealing to the ego is moving from imperfection to perfection. Perfection means it has to be achieved. Complete perfection means it has to be achieved. Fulfillment means it has to be achieved. Achieved means what? You can plan for it, you can program for it, you can do something. All this takes time, and ego loves this process. Ego loves this process. When it is said, you are that already. You are that already. You are a fool not to remember that. Ego doesn't like that language. Ego doesn't like the language of remembrance. Ego likes the language of attainment, achievement. Remembrance means that which is there already, you recognize it. Achievement means it is not there, you created it. Are you able to follow? The first thing about Vedanta is it takes away this notion first. What is that notion? Wholeness is of a present, perfection is of the future. Recognition is of the present, achievement is of the future. Again I repeat. Vijay, Purida. Achievement is of the future. Recognition is of the present. When it comes to Vedanta, it is recognizing the reality, not doing something to become perfect. Second, if imperfection is your original nature, you can never become perfect. Because whatever you do, you can never move away from your original nature. Again, I repeat, if imperfection is your original nature, you can never become perfect. Or you will be very agitated in that perfect state. And you'll be very happy in the imperfect state, because imperfection is the original nature, and in your original nature alone, you can be happy. Correct? Yeah. Supreme God vanda konjam kashtam irukum. Yeah. It will be a little bit challenging. If Maya is compared to this, illusion looks easier now. When you study illusion, theory of perception will look easier. You study that, law of karma will look easier. So, what is this? What is this idea of Purnatvam? What is this idea of Purnam? It is not an attainment. It is not an achievement. Second, if imperfection is your intrinsic nature, you will be happy imperfect. You will be tortured in perfection. When you get to the perfect state, you will be tortured because you have moved away from your original nature. Just as a jumping monkey is a happy monkey. Meditative monkey is a sorrowful monkey. Because what is the nature of the monkey? The nature of the monkey is asthira and chanchala. It moves. It has to keep moving. That is the nature of the monkey. So whenever it is constantly moving, the monkey is happy. You force the monkey not to move, it gets agitated, it gets disturbed. So the agitated monkey is the disturbed monkey. Similarly, if imperfection is your original state, you will be happy being imperfect, and perfection will become a torture. But here he says that perfection, that whole state is that Purnatvam is your original state. It's not that you have lost it, because you can never lose it. All that has happened is you have forgotten about it. It's not that you don't have a house. You have a house. You just forgot the address. All that you got to do is remember the address. And Vedanta makes you to remember that. Vedanta is not going to build a house for you and say, this is your house. Vedanta says, your house is there already. What has happened to you? You have forgotten about it. What is that house? That state of Purnatvam. And this Purnatvam can be known, this Purnatvam can be understood only when you sit down close to a master. That's why it is called Upanishad. Upanishad means sitting down close to a master. Upanishad. Upanishad means sitting closely to a master. Second, Upanishad is a beautiful, intimate relationship between the teacher and the student. What nowadays they call as synchronicity. Synchronized. They both are in the student and the disciple are both at the same wavelength. If one is at a different wavelength and the another is at a different wavelength, there is no sync. They are not in sync with each other. Upanishad reveals the truth when there is a sync between the teacher and the student. And the sync can happen when only when there is a very deep understanding between the two. Synchronization can happen only. Synchronization doesn't happen through the words. Synchronization doesn't happen through the words. It's not the words. It is a deep understanding, a deep connection. What is the deep connection? What connects the teacher and the student? The student is longing for something and the teacher is longing to share that. The student is longing for something. The same thing that the student is longing for, the guru is longing to share. Since both are looking at the same thing, there is a synchronicity. The disciple has surrendered to that surrendered disciple. And what brings about the surrender? He has understood the world as Maya, Mithya. He has understood that. What brings about surrender? Surrender arises out of a deep understanding. What is understanding? He has understood the world as Maya and the world as Maya. Okay, if the world is Maya, then what remains? If everything is Maya, the teacher is Maya, the taught is Maya. If everything is Maya, then what remains? Who can answer that question? You don't need a guru to come up to the level of Maya. You can do it by yourself. to come up to the level of Maya, you don't need a guru. You can do it by yourself. How? Sheer objective observation will make you understand the world is Maya. If you learn to observe the world objectively, you will understand the world as Maya. So you don't need a master to come and tell you the world is Maya. Your own experiences will teach you that world is Maya. How do you know that? The person in flesh and blood yesterday is not there today. What happened? It's Maya. It's gone. Where it is gone, how it is gone, why it is gone, nothing. Nothing we know of. Therefore, you need the disciple who has come up to the level of understanding that the world is Maya, that the world is Mithya, comes to the Guru. And the Guru teaches him Purnamada, Purnamidam, Purnat, Purnamudachyate, Purnasya, Purnamadhaya, Purnameva Vasishyate. And then the teacher also recognizes that those kind of student is very rare. Very difficult is to get that kind of a student. Then what the knowledge does, what the Guru does, he comes down and prepares the student to come to that level. So right up to 19 chapters, preparation is done to come up to this level. For what is the role of the Guru? What is the role of the teacher? The role of the teacher is to say that which cannot be said, to talk about that which cannot be spoken about, to teach that which is inconceivable. You need a teacher for that. If you can know it by yourself, you don't need a If you can know it by yourself, you don't need a teacher. And if you look at life, you don't need a teacher to understand the world as. You don't need a teacher to teach you world is temporary, correct? You don't need a teacher. You don't need a teacher to come and say, everything, all, even this shall pass away. You don't need a teacher to say that. For you should know it by yourself. Unfortunately, we don't know it by ourselves. Why? Because we are so caught up in, we do not know it by ourselves. Why are we not knowing it by ourselves? Because we do not observe the world objectively. We do not observe the world objectively. We do not observe the subject objectively. Both ways. The world is also not viewed objectively. The subject is also not viewed objectively. If the world, the object, and the subject is viewed objectively, what is the conclusion that you will come to? The conclusion that you will come to is, it is Maya. It is Maya. Then, what is above this Maya? What is beyond this Maya? The Guru comes and says, Purnamada, Purnamidam, Purnat, Purnam. All that comes. I'll come to that mantra. We are going to study that mantra today. Learning is not collecting information. Of course, you collect information. We are not saying it is not. In order to collect information, data, you need to question. You need to doubt. Correct? Doubt is doubting, questioning is perfectly right when you want to gather information. The more you question, the more information you will be able to collect. And every answer, that is, every information that comes can be doubted again. So you can go on and on and on asking, gathering information, gathering knowledge, and then a point of time comes where all these questions and answers have led you nowhere. All these answers and questions have led you nowhere. You need to ask so much of questions to understand that this doubt is of no use. You cannot straight away come to this point. You need to go through that process and come. The Upanishadic student is one who has done that process and come here. When one collects lots of information, you can be very knowledgeable and ignorant at the same time. When you have gathered a lot of information, you can be very knowledgeable and very ignorant also at the same time. Purnamada, Purnamidam Upanishads talks about something at a totally different level. What is the totally different level? You have understood that all that can be known, experienced is Maya. Up to that you are convinced. Then the question is, what is beyond Maya? Is there anything beyond Maya? He says it is indescribable. That which is beyond Maya is indescribable. That which is beyond Maya is indefinable, indescribable. If you have to communicate something which is inconceivable, if you have to communicate something that which cannot be communicated, but they make an effort. Through what they can communicate? They can communicate only through language. Through what they could communicate? Language becomes a very important tool for communication. So what they did, this language got created called Samskritam. That Samskritam has some of the beautiful words, and one of the beautiful words is Purnam. What is this Samskritam means? The word Samskritam means refined, well made, transformed, adorned, crowned. These are all the meanings of Samskritam. It is well made, well crafted. It's called the language of the gods, isn't it? It is also known as the language of the gods. And in that language alone, the ultimate truths are spoken out beautifully. And here is that beautiful explanation. Purnamada, Purnamida. Are you able to follow the sequence? And that is this, and that is this mantra, Purnamada, Purnamidam, Purnat, Purnamudachyate, etc. In order to communicate that which is difficult to communicate, a precise language cannot be of any help. Poetic language alone can help. Again, I repeat, if you want to communicate something very subtle, if you want to communicate something that is very meaningful, what will help is not the language of, not a precise language. The precise language cannot be of much help. You need a language that is poetic in nature. Poetry means one word can have very many meanings. Precise means one word, one meaning, that's it. The language of science is very precise. In science, every word has to be very precise in its meaning. In poetry, you can have the same word meaning a lot. Why? Because poetry tries to communicate something subtler. What is the subtlest? The reality, Brahman being the subtlest, the reality, Brahman being subtlest, it takes that much of effort to express it. Express what? Express the reality, Brahman. How did the master express the reality? By saying it is infinite, it is infinite, it is infinite. Remember this. Religion means recognizing the unmanifest in the manifest. What is religion? Religion is nothing but recognizing the manifest in the unmanifest. There is something that is manifest. In that manifest, something is hidden. So, what comprises religion? You go on negating the manifest and end in the unmanifest. As you go on negate the manifest, you will reach a point where you understand the unmanifest. So what is religion? Religion is nothing but discovering the unmanifest in the manifest. Okay, what is the world? On one hand, world is a paradox. What is the paradox of the world? The manifest part of the world is finite, limited. The unmanifest part of the world is Purnam, infinite. And logic and science cannot accept paradox. Philosophy, Vedanta can understand the paradox. Again, I repeat, science cannot accept the paradox because as far as science is concerned, paradox means it ought to be solved. Paradoxes means that got to be solved. You need to solve it. That is called a paradox. In philosophy, paradoxes is not to be solved. Paradoxes are meant to be understood. That is where Vedanta at the core is something incomprehensible. Because wherever there is a paradox, the logic says resolve it. It will never say, logic can never say enjoy the paradox, be blissful in the paradox. Logic cannot say that. Logic will say, how can you be blissful in the paradox? Philosophy, Vedanta comes and says, you can be blissful only in a paradox. Why? Because the reality is paradoxical. The reality is paradoxical. What is the reality? The reality is this: discovering the unmanifest in the manifest. So I repeat it again. It is discovering the unmanifest in the manifest. If we one day we'll be studying this Isavasi Upanishad, When we do the Isavasya Upanishad, the, the, the preamble to the mantra itself will take 2 sessions. I'm not going into so detailed now. Whenever we do the Isa, we will study that. The preamble to this invocatory prayer itself will go into sessions because it is that profound, it is that deep. With whatever we studied, now we go into this mantra. Adaha and idam. Purnam adaha, purnam idam. So 2 words. Adaha means that, idam means this. This refers to the world, that refers to Brahman. Language of the Upanishad is that and this. You are that. Why can't they say you are Brahman? They could have said you are God. No, it becomes very precise. When you say you are that, what does that mean? That's quite. So again here, you could have easily said, instead of idam and adaha, you could have easily said, Brahman is infinite, world is infinite. He doesn't say that. He says, the language of Upanishad is that and this. That's why most of the Indian languages also we use this predominantly. No, we will never say anything directly, precisely. We will always talk like that, this, pagala, mudiyuma, mudiyada, pagala. Pagalana, what does it mean? Pagala means what? You don't know whether it is yes or no, correct? Yes means yes, no means no. Pakla means it's neither yes nor no. That is the language. What is it? Purnamada, Purnamidam. Brahman is supreme, infinite. The world is also infinite. When infinite comes out of infinite, what will remain? When infinite comes out of infinite, what will remain? Infinite. Infinite will remain. That's what he said. When infinite comes out of infinite, what remains? Infinite. The world has emerged from Brahman. But that Brahman coming out of world, coming out of Brahman doesn't make Brahman any less. Meaning, something will not be lost in Brahman. Okay. If something comes out of something, original is lost in quantity, no? That's how it works, correct? There is a glass of water which is full, purnam. You take half the glass of water, what happens? Something is reduced. So, in all worldly transaction, if something goes out of something, there will be a reduction in the original. You have 10 rupees and you give away 5 rupees, you are left with you have 10 rupees. You give away 5 rupees. What are you left with? 5 rupees. Okay. You are less by 5 rupees. You have 10 rupees. You give away 10 rupees. You are left with nothing. Isavasya Upanishad comes with a different economics. It comes with a different mathematics. The mathematics of Isavasya Upanishad says, you have 10 rupees, you give away 10 rupees, what remains is 10 rupees. When infinite take away infinite from infinite, it doesn't become zero. What remains is infinite. When infinite is taken away from infinite, it doesn't diminish in any way. This is something difficult to comprehend. Therefore, examples are given. What is the first example given? Lighting many candles from a single flame. There is a flame. Out of that single flame, millions of candles are lit. But nothing happens to the original flame. When we say nothing happens to the original flame, it neither increases in quantity nor decreases in quantity. It remains the same. That's what you have to understand. Are you able to follow? Purnamadav Purnamidam says there will neither be a decrease nor increase. If there is an increase, that increase will necessarily be followed by a decrease. Here, Purnam means there is neither a possibility for an increase, nor is there any possibility for decrease. It can neither increase nor decrease. When something comes out of it, how can it remain the same? Something, there is this Brahman, and then this world is superimposed upon Brahman, and that superimposition will no way affect the original. Superimposition doesn't touch the original in any way. Superimposition will not affect the original in any way. Are you able to understand the difference? It doesn't affect the original in any way. It doesn't touch the original in any way. Meaning, another example is reflection in the mirror. You go to the mirror room and you see infinite images of yourself. Even though you see infinite images of your own self, you also understand nothing has happened to you. It is those infinite images appear because of the infinite reflecting medium. So, those infinite reflective images are seen because of the infinite reflecting mediums available. Even though the reflections appear to be infinite, you understand nothing happens to the original. That is Purnamada, Purnamidam, Purnat, Purnamudachyate, Purnasya, Purnamadhaya, Purnameva Vasishyate. To explain this, Ram-Tirtha gives an example of a king in the mirror room versus a dog in the mirror room. A king in the mirror room versus a dog in the same mirror room. The king is having a dog. One day by mistake, the dog entered the mirror room. What happens when the king enters the mirror room? We stand in one front of mirror, we get so much of joy looking at ourselves, isn't it? You go into a mirror room and you can see yourself in so many reflections. What a joy you get. Why? Because you understand all those reflections are you only. All those reflections are you. Correct? The dog enters the mirror room. The dog also sees infinite dogs. And what does the dog do? The dog starts barking. The more it barks, all the infinite reflections bark back. And it gets more terrified. More terrified. More it barks, more the reflections bark back. It barks and barks and barks and lies and lie dead in the mirror room, he says. Because it's so fatigued barking. It's so fatigued. It's so afraid. It's so frightened. It's so fatigued. What will happen when you are frightened and fatigued? You will die only. What else will happen? Clear? You will die. Same mirror. You understand it differently. The dog understands it differently. What is the difference? You know, the dog doesn't know. What is it that you know? Even though the reflections are infinite, you are that infinite reflections. Now bring it to the world. What is the world? The world is nothing but the infinite reflections you are seeing around is the world. What is the world? The infinite reflections that you are seeing. When you see those infinite reflections in the world, how do you see it? Do you see it like the king in the mirror room or like dog in the mirror room? How do we see? Jairangan. How do we see? We see it like dog in the mirror room. We bark. More we bark, more it barks back. And it is terrifying. In that you bark more. It comes back more. What is right knowledge? Right knowledge is you see the infinite variety, and those infinite variety, you understand it as your own self. The third example is the dream world. The third example to explain Purnamada Purnamidam is the dream phenomena. What is the dream phenomena? The dreamer and the dream world. What is the dream phenomena made up of? The dreamer and the dream world. And the dream world also has infinite beings in it. Correct? In the dream, you are sitting in a bus. You are going in a train in the dream. Are you the only person in the dream in the train? There are so many. So many individuals sitting with their own individual worries and anxieties, sitting with their own individual sufferings, sitting with their own individual problems. Where? In the dream. You wake up, you understand what? You are as real as the others in the dream. Everything about the dream is so unreal. It's not that you are the only person unreal in the dream. The bus is, what, you're going in the bus or train? Train, huh? I don't know what I said. Train or bus? No, train. The train is the dream. The engine driver is the dream. The passengers, dream. You, the important person in the dream, is unreal. If you, the important person in your dream, is unreal, everything around surrounding you is also unreal. And yet, there is this suffering. And yet there is this worry. And yet there is this suffering. And why this worry and suffering? This worry and suffering is because it is not understood as complete, full. If you understand it as full, Purnam, complete, there is no fear, there is no anxiety. If you don't understand it as full, there is always some fear. There is always some anxiety. Isavasya Upanishad says, take away infinite from infinite, what remains is infinite. And why is it called infinite? It is called infinite because it is beyond the time. Reality is that which persists. Reality is that which cannot be confined to the boundary of time. Reality cannot be confined to the boundary of the time. Reality is that which persists. Reality is that which exists in all periods of time, remains the same in the past, present, and future. Carefully understand. It remains the same without going through any modifications. That is reality. We go through constant changes and modifications. Reality exists both as manifest and unmanifest. Reality exists as the structure and substratum. The world arises out of reality, exists in reality, and merges back into reality. When it comes out of Brahman, it remains as Brahman, and when it goes back to Brahman, it goes back as Brahman. Example, as waves arise, exist, and merge into the ocean. The waves are nothing but water. So is the world nothing but the reality, Brahman. And this Brahman is called Anirvachaniyam, inconceivable, indefinable. You cannot define Brahman. You cannot define God. And don't make the mistake of taking God cannot be defined as the definition of God. When we say God cannot be defined, it means language cannot express God. Thoughts cannot express God. Feelings cannot experience God. Perceptions cannot perceive God. And yet, lot of indicators are given. Beautiful indicators. And those beautiful indicators, we will take it up in the next class. Ekam, Advayam, Nirakaram, Sarvagatam, Nirgunam, like that, etc. There are so many indicators that he is going to talk about Brahman. For today, we studied only the invocation. What is it, invocation? It is infinite. And what is infinite means? That which remains the same. That which remains the same, meaning all the modifications happens, but those modifications doesn't affect the real. There are these changes, there are these modifications, but these changes and modifications in no way affect the reality. Why? Because it is Purnam by nature. Why? Because it is Purnam, it is complete. And remember, Purnatvam is not an attainment. Purnatvam is a recognition. Purnatvam is not an attainment. You don't achieve Purnatvam. Pure Purnam, you are already. The difference is one knows it, we all don't know it. That's all. One knows it, we all don't know. Now the effort is how to know it. Knowing means recognition, remembrance. In Vedantic sense, knowing means remembrance. Are you able to follow? In Vedantic sense, knowing means remembrance. That's how the Isavasya Upanishad conclude by saying, oh, mind, remember, 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 remember. It goes on talking about remembrance, not gaining anything new. And that is the invocatory prayer. Purnamada Purnamidam. With this, we conclude for today and we continue with the same Purnamada Purnamidam and the indicative definitions next class also.